My husband left me for his secretary and locked me out. He forgot I was the one paying the mortgage. My key jammed in the lock, scraping metal against metal like the house itself was rejecting me. I tried again, harder this time, my hands full of grocery bags and my heart already racing. Through the frosted glass, I saw suitcases lined neatly by the stairs. Not packed in panic, packed with care. Then I saw them. My husband stood in the hallway, his arm wrapped around her waist. His secretary. Young. Confident. Wearing the sweater I bought him last Christmas. I knocked once sharply. He opened the door just enough to block me from stepping inside. His face was calm, almost bored. "You don't live here anymore, Kate," he said flatly. The words hit harder than the cold wind behind me. 40 years of marriage erased in one sentence. I laughed, a short broken sound, because surely this was a mistake. Surely he didn't mean it. He did. Before I continue, if you want more real revenge stories like this, hit subscribe now. You won't want to miss what comes next. He closed the door while I was still breathing his name. The rain started as a mist, then turned sharp and heavy, soaking my coat in seconds. I stood on the porch clutching grocery bags like proof that I still belonged there. Milk leaked onto my shoes. The paper bag ripped. Apples rolled across the porch boards, bumping softly against the door that would not open for me again. I knocked once more, weaker this time. "Kyle," I called. My voice shook. "Please." No answer. Through the door, I heard laughter. Hers. Bright and careless. The sound cut deeper than anger ever could. I slid down onto the top step, rain running into my hair, my collar, my spine. I had paid for that porch. I had chosen the pink color. I had planted the flowers now drowning beside me. A neighbor's car passed slowly. I turned my face away, shame burning hotter than the cold. I was 62 years old, locked out of my own home like a stranger. The door never opened again that night. When the rain soaked through my clothes and into my bones, I stood up. I left the groceries where they fell. I walked away with nothing but my purse and the sound of the door shutting in my head. I sat in my car shaking, hands locked around the steering wheel, rain hammering the windshield so hard it blurred the world. My phone buzzed in my lap. His name flashed on the screen. For one foolish second, hope rose in my chest. Then I read the message. "Please don't embarrass yourself. We're happy." That was all. No apology. No explanation. No goodbye. I stared at the words until my eyes burned. Happy. As if happiness erased 40 years. As if happiness gave him the right to throw me out like broken furniture. I typed a dozen replies and erased everyone. Begging would only make it worse. Another message followed. "You'll get your things later. Through my lawyer." My lawyer. The words felt unreal. My husband had already planned this. While I was paying bills and planning dinners, he was planning my removal. I dropped the phone onto the passenger seat and let myself cry for exactly 1 minute. Then I wiped my face, started the engine, and drove. I didn't know where I was going yet. I only knew one thing for sure. I would not disappear quietly. Leah opened the door before I could knock. One look at my face and she pulled me inside, wrapping me in a towel and then her arms. I smelled tea and clean laundry and safety, and I nearly collapsed from it. "Sit," she said firmly, guiding me to the couch. "You're freezing." I told her everything in pieces. The lock. The suitcases. The secretary's smile. Leah didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she handed me a mug and waited until my hands stopped shaking. Then she said something that changed everything. "Kate," she said slowly, carefully, "you paid the bills." I nodded. That had always been our arrangement. My income. His ambition. She leaned forward. "Whose name is on the mortgage?" The question landed like a match in dry grass. Images flashed through my mind, bank statements, automatic payments, years of responsibility. I never questioned. "I think mine," I whispered. Leah's eyes sharpened. "Not think." "No. Tomorrow we check." For the first time since the door closed on me, something stirred beneath the pain. Not hope yet. Something harder. Something steadier. Leah squeezed my hand. If he made a mistake, Kate, she said, it's a very big one. I barely slept on Leah's couch. My mind kept replaying the lock turning, the words "you don't live here" anymore echoing like a chant. At dawn, I opened my laptop with hands that felt steadier than my heart. I searched my email archive going back years. Payment confirmations, bank transfers, mortgage statements. There they were month after month, all addressed to me. My name, my account, my signature. I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were scanned documents I'd saved just in case. I smiled bitterly at my younger self. She had been smarter than I gave her credit for. Every payment slip told the same story. I paid. I paid when he changed jobs. I paid when his business failed. I paid when he said it was temporary. Temporary had lasted decades. He never noticed. He never cared enough to check. By the time Leah brought me toast, I had everything organized into neat digital folders. Dates. Amounts. Proof. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath. I wasn't homeless. I was locked out of my own house by a man who forgot whose name was on the door. The legal aid office smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. I almost turned around at the door, suddenly afraid I was being dramatic. Then I remembered the rain, the text, the lock. The lawyer was a woman about my age, sharp-eyed and calm. She listened without rushing me, taking notes while I spoke. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and smiled for the first time. "He locked you out?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Change the locks." "And your name is on the deed and mortgage?" "Yes." Her smile widened. "Then that's unlawful eviction." The words rang in my ears. Unlawful. Not emotional. Not complicated. Illegal. She explained my rights slowly, clearly. Every sentence felt like a brick placed back under my feet. "He doesn't get to decide you're done living there," she said. "Not without a court." I left the office with a folder under my arm and my spine a little straighter. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and laughed once, softly. Cal thought he'd won by locking a door. He had no idea. He'd just handed me the key. That evening, I checked my credit card statements for the first time in months. I hadn't needed to before. I trusted him. That trust tasted sour now. The charges jumped out immediately. Fancy restaurants, boutique hotels, weekend trips I was never told about, all charged to the card linked to my income. There it was. Dinner for two, Camelot, expensive. 3 nights at a hotel across town. Champagne. Room service. All while he told me he was working late. My hands didn't shake this time. They felt cold and precise. I highlighted each charge, saving copies, labeling dates. He wasn't just betraying me. He was funding his new life with my money. I imagined her laughing over those dinners, believing she had won something valuable. She didn't know she was dining on evidence. Leah watched me quietly from across the table. "You okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said, surprising myself. Because I finally understood something important. He hadn't taken everything from me. He'd only shown me exactly where to aim. The post appeared the next morning. Friends started sending it to me before I even opened my app. A photo of them together, smiling too hard. Her head on his shoulder. My living room in the background. The caption read, "When love finds honesty." I stared at the word honesty until I laughed. It came out sharp and ugly, but real. Comments poured in. Hearts. Congratulations. People who had sat at my table and eaten food I paid for. People who didn't know the truth and didn't ask. I didn't comment. I didn't like or share. I took screenshots. Everyone. Leah leaned over my shoulder. "They're brave," she said. "No," I replied. "They're careless." Public lies leave long trails. That night, I slept better than I had since the door closed on me. Not because the pain was gone, but because the story was no longer only his to tell. And if you're still watching, subscribe now, because this is where the quiet planning turns into something unforgettable. I moved carefully, quietly. No warnings. No drama. First, I froze the joint account. Perfectly legal. Then I changed every password tied to my name, my income, my identity. I updated the property insurance, listing Kyle exactly as he was now a tenant. Nothing more. Each click felt like tightening a knot he didn't know was around him yet. I didn't post. I didn't call. I didn't respond to his messages asking why his card stopped working. Silence became my shield. Leah watched me work, impressed and a little afraid. "You're calm," she said. "I'm done being loud," I replied. Revenge didn't need shouting. It needed preparation. By midnight, everything was in place. Documents saved in 3 locations. Copies printed. Dates logged. I sat back and closed my eyes. He thought locking me out would break me. He didn't realize he'd finally given me the quiet I needed to think. The locksmith arrived 2 days later, right on time. I asked him to wait. A police officer stood beside me on the porch. Calm. Neutral. Boring in the best way. I handed him the deed. He read it carefully and nodded. "You're within your rights," he said. The locksmith changed the locks with quick, practiced movements. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like air filling my lungs again. When it was done, I held the new key in my palm. It was heavier than it looked. I didn't go inside right away. I stood on the porch and listened. The house was quiet. No laughter. No performance. Just walls that remembered me. That evening, Kyle came home. His face twisted when his key failed. He pounded once, furious. "You can't do this," he shouted. I opened the door just enough for him to see me. Calm. Steady. "Actually," I said, holding up the document, "I already did." And for the first time since the rain, I smiled. Kyle stood on the porch shouting my name like it still belonged to him. I stayed inside, hand resting on the new lock, feeling its solid weight. When I finally opened the door, it was only wide enough to speak. "You can't lock me out," he said, his face red with anger. "This is my house." I lifted the folder. "Read," I said. He glanced at the document, then laughed. "You're bluffing." "I paid the mortgage," I replied. "Every month. For 26 years. His smile faded. He tried another angle then, soft voice, fake concern. "Kate, you're upset. Let's talk like adults." "We are," I said. "Just not inside." The police officer cleared his throat. "Sir, you'll need to leave." Kyle stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The woman he knew would have apologized by now. He left cursing, promising lawyers and consequences. I closed the door gently behind him. For the first time in days, I slept in my own bed. The divorce papers arrived 3 days later, thick and dramatic. Kyle accused me of emotional cruelty, abandonment, instability. I read every word slowly, almost impressed by the confidence of the lies. My lawyer read them too. Then she smirked. "Let's counterclaim," she said. "Financial misconduct." That word again. Financial. Solid. Provable. We laid everything out. Credit card abuse, unlawful eviction, misuse of shared funds. Dates. Receipts. Screenshots. Truth stacked neatly against fiction. Kyle's lawyer called that afternoon, voice sharp and rushed. "This is unnecessary," he said. "We can settle quietly." I smiled at the phone. Quiet was over. That night, Kyle texted me. "You're making this worse for yourself." I didn't reply. I added the message to my evidence folder. He still thought this was about feelings. I knew it was about facts. The emails were hidden deep, buried under years of junk and receipts. I found them by accident while searching for one bank statement. Then one turned into 10. 10 turned into hundreds. Kyle had been moving clients. Quietly. Carefully. Or so he thought. He used his work email to send introductions, then switched to a private account. The side business was under her name. His secretary. She wasn't just sleeping with him. She was signing papers. Contracts. Payments. Promises. I printed everything. My hand stayed steady the entire time. When I showed my lawyer, she exhaled slowly. "This," she said, tapping the stack, "changes everything." It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud. Kyle had built his new life by stealing from his old one. I wondered if she knew, if she understood what she'd agreed to, or if she believed the same lies I once did. Either way, the truth was now mine to carry. And I carried it carefully. I bought a small flash drive at the drugstore. Nothing fancy. Ordinary. That felt right. I saved everything twice. Then 3 times. Emails. Statements. Photos. Legal documents. Each file labeled clearly, like a quiet promise to myself. Revenge wasn't yelling. It wasn't showing up unannounced. Revenge was backup. I hid 1 copy in Leah's house, another in a safety box at the bank. The 3rd stayed with me always. Kyle kept texting, calling, switching tones, angry, apologetic, threatening. "You're ruining everything," one message said. I saved it. "You need help," another read. Saved. The pattern built itself. Manipulation, pressure, fear. My lawyer nodded when I showed her. "He's documenting himself," she said. I stopped feeling scared then. Fear needs uncertainty. I had clarity now. And clarity is dangerous to liars. The deposition room was cold and smelled like stale coffee. Kyle sat across from me, eyes tired, jaw tight. He wouldn't look at me at first. His lawyer spoke gently, like I was fragile. "Mrs. Collins, would you say you've been emotionally unstable recently?" I answered calmly. "No." They pushed harder. Stress, menopause, loneliness. Then my lawyer slid the mortgage receipts across the table. Month after month, year after year. All my name. The room went quiet. Even Kyle's lawyer paused. "You paid all of this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. Kyle finally looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The story they'd planned collapsed in that silence. I wasn't unstable. I was the foundation. And they had just admitted it. She called me that night. His secretary. Her voice shook. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "He said it was all handled." I believed she believed that. At least at first. "I signed things," she whispered. "He said it was normal." "It wasn't," I replied. "And you need a lawyer." She started crying. Promotions don't usually come with criminal risk. Kyle had sold her a dream using my money and his lies. Now she was waking up inside it. "I just wanted a future," she said. "So did I answered. We hung up quietly. No anger. No comfort. Just truth. That night, Kyle showed up at the house again. I didn't answer. Some doors don't reopen once you see what's on the other side. Kyle called after midnight. His voice sounded small, almost familiar. "You're hurting yourself," he said, dragging this out. "No," I replied evenly. "I'm documenting you." He went silent, then angry, then pleading. "I made a mistake," he said. "We can fix this." Mistakes are accidents. This had been a plan. I ended the call and wrote down the time. Every late-night plea became another brick in the wall between us. I wasn't cold. I was finished. Sleep came easily after that. Kyle's parents called the next afternoon. I stared at the phone for a long moment before answering, already knowing what they would say. His mother spoke first, her voice calm but heavy with judgment. She told me I needed to be reasonable, that Kyle was under stress, that marriages sometimes ended badly and didn't need to become ugly. His father said nothing at first, but I could hear him breathing on the line, waiting for me to agree. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply opened my laptop and began detaching files. Mortgage payments, utility bills, insurance records. Years of proof that I had carried the weight while Kyle chased ambition and excuses. "I've sent you something," I said quietly. "Please read it before you call me again." There was a pause. His mother's tone shifted, softer now. Confused. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't ask," I replied. The call ended without apologies. They never called again. And in that silence, I felt something close to relief. The rumors didn't reach me directly. They came through quiet channels, half sentences, and careful pauses. A former coworker texted first. HR is asking questions, she wrote. People are nervous. Kyle called 10 minutes later, his voice sharp with panic. What did you tell them? He demanded. I told no one, I said truthfully.
He didn't believe me.
Liars never do. They assume truth spreads the same way lies do, fast, loud, and careless. Over the next few days, his messages came in waves. Anger.
Blame.
Fear. He accused me of ruining his career, of poisoning people against him. Each message revealed more than he realized.
Dates.
Names. Details that confirmed everything I already suspected. I saved them all. At night, I sat in Leah's guest room listening to the house settle, thinking about how fragile reputations really were. Kyle had built his on shortcuts and charm. Now it was cracking under the weight of questions he could not answer. I didn't push. I didn't interfere. I waited. The email from the forensic accountant arrived just before sunrise. I read it slowly, twice, making sure I understood every word. The money trail was clear now. Project payments that should have gone to the company had been moved into a private account. His account. Dates matched emails. Amounts matched invoices. Nothing was missing anymore, not money, not motive, not proof. I forwarded the report to my lawyer and closed my laptop. My hands were calm. My breathing was steady. This wasn't revenge yet. This was confirmation.
Kyle called again that afternoon.
His voice sounded tired, worn thin. They're auditing everything, he said. I don't know how this happened. I almost laughed at that. It happened because you did it, I replied. He went quiet. That night, I sat alone on the porch swing I had bought years ago. The air was still. The house felt patient, like it knew what was coming. And for the first time since the lock turned against me, I felt ready. Kyle didn't stop trying after the audit rumors spread. He started showing up again, always when he thought I'd be alone. Once, he rattled the back door handle so hard it shook the frame. I stood inside the kitchen, heart pounding, phone already in my hand. Kate, open up, he called. We need to talk like adults. Adults don't break into houses they don't own. I called the police that night, not to punish him, to protect myself. When the officer arrived, Kyle had already left, but I filed the report anyway. I showed the deed. I showed the text. The officer nodded slowly, writing everything down. This is escalation, he said. The next morning, my lawyer filed for a restraining order. She said the judge would see it clearly, pattern, intent, risk. For the first time, the law stood between me and the man who thought I still belonged to him. I slept with the lights off that night.
Calm.
Guarded. Safe. The restraining order was approved faster than I expected. The judge barely hesitated. Evidence speaks louder than fear. Kyle was ordered to stay away from the house, from me, from my work. When he was served the papers, he exploded. My phone filled with messages until my lawyer told me to stop reading them. You don't need more proof, she said. He's giving us plenty. Then the blog post appeared. It didn't name him directly. It didn't need to. Local executive under review for financial irregularities. The headline read. It talked about blurred lines between business and personal funds. About internal audits. About trust being broken. Kyle went silent online after that. No more happy photos. No more love captions. The town noticed. People always do. At the grocery store, a woman I barely knew touched my arm gently and said, I'm sorry, Kate. I nodded, thanked her, and walked on. The truth was spreading now, slow and steady. And I didn't have to chase it. The quiet evenings returned, but they felt different now. Not lonely. Honest. I spent my nights on the porch swing, listening to the wind move through the trees. The swing creaked softly beneath me, the same sound it had made when Kyle and I were still pretending. I thought about how much of my life I had spent adjusting myself to fit someone else's comfort, lowering my voice, shrinking my needs, waiting for appreciation that never lasted. Now there was nothing to perform, no one to manage. Leah sat beside me one evening, handing me a blanket. You're different, she said. I feel different, I replied. I wasn't rushing anymore. I wasn't chasing closure. I knew it was coming. The house felt like it was breathing with me, walls settling into truth. Kyle thought he had taken my peace when he locked me out. But peace, I was learning, doesn't disappear. It waits. The notice came in the mail on a plain, white envelope. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another legal update. Instead, it stopped me cold. Kyle's new condo was in default. He had stopped paying rent. The bank had traced his financial ties back to shared records. My records. I wasn't responsible, but I was notified. I sat at the kitchen table and read the letter twice. The irony pressed down hard enough to make me laugh. He had thrown me out of a house I owned, then failed to keep the roof over his own head. I didn't act yet. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't revenge. This was gravity. Kyle had built his new life on money that wasn't his. Now it was collapsing under its own weight. That night, I slept deeply, dreaming of open doors and quiet mornings. Tomorrow, things would change. The waiting was over. The sheriff arrived at exactly 9 in the morning. 2 officers.
Calm.
Professional. Final. I stood on the porch with the paperwork in my hands, my name clear on every line. Kyle arrived 10 minutes later, frantic, his secretary trailing behind him with a suitcase. She was crying already. He was shouting. "You can't do this," he yelled. The officer raised a hand. "Sir, this is a lawful eviction." They were given 30 minutes. Kyle cursed me the entire time. She said nothing, just stared at the house like it had betrayed her. When they left, the door closed softly behind them. I changed the locks again. This time, I smiled. I walked through every room slowly, touching walls, breathing deeply. The house was mine again in every way that mattered. Kyle thought power was loud, but real power is quiet. And it finally belonged to me. The audit report landed on Kyle's boss's desk the same morning. My lawyer had timed it carefully. Nothing rushed. Nothing hidden. By noon, Kyle was suspended pending investigation. His access badge was revoked. His company email locked. Years of shortcuts and lies reduced to one word: review. He called me screaming, then begging, then silent. I didn't answer. By evening, HR requested a formal statement from me. They wanted clarity, stability,
Truth.
I gave them everything.
Clean.
Organized. Undeniable. The tone shifted immediately. They stopped seeing me as a bitter spouse. I was a witness. Kyle's career, the one he always said mattered more than mine, was unraveling without me lifting a finger. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room. The walls didn't echo anymore. They listened. The court froze Kyle's accounts 3 days later. Every one tied to the investigation. Business. Personal. Everything. His lawyers started calling. First polite, then frantic. "This can still be resolved," he said. "It already is," I replied. Kyle showed up once more, pacing at the end of the driveway, shouting my name like it still had power. I watched from behind the curtains and felt nothing. The man who once controlled the story couldn't even access his own money now. I thought about the nights I lay awake worrying about bills he said were handled. The vacations I skipped so he could reinvest. Now, he understood what helpless felt like. And I felt free. The divorce hearing was quieter than I expected. No shouting. No drama. Just the sound of papers turning and a judge who had seen lies before. I sat straight in my chair, hands folded, breathing slow. Kyle avoided my eyes the entire time. The judge reviewed the records carefully. Mortgage payments. Bank transfers. Years of proof that told one clear story. She asked a few questions, all direct, all calm. Kyle's answers were short and defensive. Mine were steady. Finally, the judge looked up. "Mrs. Collins provided all financial support for the marital home," she said. "Mr. Collins contributed deception and misuse of shared funds." The words settled over the room like dust after a storm. The decision followed quickly. Full ownership of the house was awarded to me. No shared claim. No delay. Kyle's shoulders dropped. He looked smaller then, like a man whose noise had finally run out.
I didn't feel happy.
I felt finished. She left him quietly, the way people do when they finally understand they were never special. I heard about it from Leah, who heard it from someone else. No shouting. No big scene. She packed a suitcase, took the designer handbag he bought her with my money, and walked out. Kyle tried to spin it, of course. He told people she was confused and that they were on a break. But no one believed him anymore. Lies lose their shine once the truth is known. He called me late that night. I watched the phone ring until it stopped. Then he texted, "I never meant for it to end like this." I saved the message and blocked the number. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt done. He had chosen excitement over loyalty, shortcuts over honesty. Now he was alone with the results. For years, I had carried him. Now he had to carry himself. And he was discovering how heavy that really was. The moving truck arrived on a bright morning.
Not for me, for the past.
I carried boxes out myself, choosing what stayed and what went. Old photos, old clothes, old reminders of a life built on uneven ground. I painted the walls that afternoon. Soft blue in the living room, warm white in the hallway. I covered the spot where our wedding photos once hung, not with anger, but with care. Each brushstroke felt like a decision. This stays. This goes. This is mine now. I opened every window and let fresh air move through the house. The rooms felt lighter, like they had been waiting for honesty. That night, I sat on the floor with takeout and laughed at nothing at all. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't ask permission. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like a beginning. And I knew, deep in my bones, that the best part was still ahead. The side business Kyle had built in secret didn't last long once the investigation spread. Authorities seized it within weeks. Accounts frozen. Assets listed. The name he'd proudly attached to it suddenly meant nothing. What he didn't know was that I followed the auction quietly. I didn't attend in person. I used a proxy.
Clean.
Legal.
Simple.
When the paperwork came through, I read it twice just to be sure. I now owned the company he tried to hide from me. I didn't feel giddy. I felt balanced. Like a scale finally leveled. I renamed the business. I rehired 2 workers he'd cut corners with. I paid every overdue bill in full. The calls stopped after that. Kyle didn't protest. I think he knew better. He tried to build something by stealing. I rebuilt it by finishing what he broke. And for the first time in years, my name was attached to something honest again. The call from HR came a week later. The woman on the line spoke carefully, like she was walking through glass. "We're restructuring," she said. "We need stability." I already knew what that meant. She asked if I'd consider consulting. Temporary at first. Then paused. The board approved triple Kyle's former rate. I agreed, without hesitation. Not out of pride. Out of clarity. When I walked into the building, people looked at me differently. Not with pity. With respect. I wasn't the abandoned wife anymore. I was the woman who understood the finances better than anyone else in the room. That afternoon, I reviewed files Kyle never bothered to read. I corrected errors he ignored. It felt good to fix things quietly. I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. For years, I supported a man's ambition. Now, my work finally stood on its own. The meeting room was cold and bright. Too clean for the mess it was about to hold. I sat at the long table with 3 executives and 1 empty chair. The door opened. Kyle walked in. His eyes widened when he saw me. Shock froze his face. He hadn't known. I nodded politely. "Welcome back," I said. He didn't sit. He couldn't. The review was short.
Clear. Calm.
Each finding read aloud like a verdict waiting for ink. Unauthorized transfers. Breach of trust. Misuse of company funds. Kyle tried to speak once. The chair beside him remained empty. When it ended, he looked at me like he wanted an explanation. I didn't give him one. Some lessons don't need words. When he walked out, shoulders slumped, I stayed seated. This room used to be his kingdom. Now it was just another place where the truth caught up. The termination letter was signed that afternoon. I signed it myself. Kyle was fired for fraud and breach of contract. No appeals. No soft landing. When I placed the pen down, my hand didn't shake. I felt steady, anchored. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was consequence. He emailed me that night. One sentence. "I never thought you'd do this." I didn't reply. For years, he never thought about what I carried, what I paid, what I protected. Now, thinking had arrived too late. I left the office early and walked home under a soft sky. The house lights welcomed me, not like shelter, like ownership. Inside, everything was quiet, honest quiet. I made myself dinner and ate at the table alone, slowly, without rushing. Nothing tasted bitter anymore, because nothing was being swallowed just to survive. The settlement check arrived in a plain envelope. No apology, no letter, just numbers. Enough to pay off the mortgage completely. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed, softly, almost in disbelief. I walked to the bank that same afternoon. The teller smiled when I said what I wanted to do. When the mortgage balance hit zero, something lifted inside my chest. I walked out holding the receipt like a trophy no one could take. That night, I poured a glass of wine and toasted my own name. "To Kate," I said aloud. No one interrupted. I slept deeply, knowing the house was mine in every sense of the word. No locks to fear, no keys to beg for, just walls that had finally stopped holding secrets. I donated part of the settlement quietly. No press, no photos. A local shelter for women rebuilding after betrayal. The director cried when I told her why. "People think survival is loud," she said. "It isn't," I replied. Giving felt better than spending. Better than revenge. It felt like closing a circle. I volunteered twice a week after that. I listened more than I spoke. Pain sounds the same in every voice. I didn't tell my story unless someone asked. Healing doesn't need an audience. Kyle's name stopped coming up in conversations. That felt like the final gift. He had taken years from me. I refused to let him take my future. And for the first time, I felt rich in ways no bank statement could show. A local paper ran a short piece the following month. "Woman wins home after betrayal," the headline read. I laughed when I saw it, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Friends called. Old ones. New ones. They spoke with admiration, not pity. I framed the article and hung it in my office, not as a trophy, but as proof. Proof that truth holds longer than lies. That evening, Kyle showed up at the end of the driveway.
Smaller.
Older. "Can we talk?" he asked. I looked at the framed deed on the wall behind me. "No," I said. "If you're still here, subscribe now for stories where justice doesn't whisper. It stands tall." I closed the door gently. Some endings don't need forgiveness. They need boundaries. The night was quiet after he left. No shouting. No drama. Just the sound of crickets and the wind moving through trees I planted years ago. I sat by the fireplace with a blanket and tea. The house felt warm, settled, like it finally trusted me back. I thought about the woman I was when I stood in the rain holding groceries. She had been scared.
Lost.
Broken open. But she hadn't disappeared. She had waited. I picked up the framed deed and ran my fingers over the glass. Ownership isn't just legal. It's emotional. This space was mine again. My silence. My peace. I didn't miss him. I missed the version of myself I had sacrificed. Now she was home. The morning came softly, like it didn't want to scare me. I woke before the sun and stayed still for a while, listening to the quiet. Not the heavy quiet I once feared, but the kind that feels earned. I made coffee slowly, measuring the grounds the way I always had, except this time no one rushed me. No one complained. I sat on the porch swing and watched the light spread across the yard. Every tree, every crack in the sidewalk felt familiar again, like old friends returning after a long misunderstanding. I thought about the woman I had been standing in the rain with groceries slipping from her hands. She had felt small, disposable, but she hadn't disappeared. She had learned. I held the mortgage receipt in my lap, smoothing the paper like it was something fragile. It wasn't just proof of payment. It was proof of endurance. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had carried me this far. Peace was what would carry me forward. Kyle thought locking me out would end me.
I know that now.
He thought fear would make me quiet, that shame would make me disappear. He never understood that the locks were never his power to use. They were always mine to change. I stood in the hallway that evening and looked at the front door, the same door that once closed in my face.
It looked ordinary now.
Just wood and metal. No memory strong enough to hurt me anymore. I framed the deed and hung it where our wedding photo used to be. Not out of spite, out of truth. This was the life I had built, paid for, and protected. I turned off the lights one by one and walked to my bedroom without fear. The house settled around me like it finally recognized its owner. In the end, I didn't just keep the house. I kept my voice, my silence, my story. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe for more powerful revenge stories, and tell me in the comments what part hit you the hardest.